Living by Design is partnering with the American Heart Association of Indiana, continuing our 5-part Healthy by Design COVID series. Kathy Holloway Hill speaks with world-renowned psychologist Dr. Richard Davidson today on Living by Design. Living by Design with host Kathy Holloway Hill. Kathy is a strong, powerful voice. She entertains, informs, and inspires her audiences everywhere she goes.
Hi, I'm Kathy Holloway Hill, and welcome to the Living by Design show. I am your host for the evening, and we continue our COVID series with an incredible guest, Dr. Richard Davidson, who is a world-renowned psychologist, psychiatrist. He was named by Time magazine as one of the 100 most influential people in the world in 2006. He's worked with the Dalai Lama. I saw his TED Talk, and it was powerful, and he is powerful, and he's also so gracious to join us today to talk about COVID and all of the emotional and psychological traumas that we've had to deal with over the past year. Dr. Richard, thank you so kindly for joining us today to help our viewers.
Thank you so much for having me, Kathy. It's really a pleasure and an honor to be here.
Well, you, sir, have really been busy. Your bio is incredible and very impressive. And I also see in you, because I've looked at a lot of your work, and when I see your videos, I just see a very humble guy. And I really like that, and I appreciate that. So thank you for that.
Well, I really appreciate that. It means a lot to me. Thank you.
Well, absolutely. Yes. And, you know, we have had to deal with a lot over the past year with this COVID pandemic. And before we get to that, I just want you to share a little bit about yourself. And, you know, we're all motivated to do whatever we do in this life. And because as I was listening to some of your videos, it just really resonated with me. Everything you said resonated with me. So just talk a little bit at first about yourself, your work, and what was your motivation and inspiration to go this route?
Well, thank you for the question. I am a psychologist and a neuroscientist by training. And when I first began my career, I began with a simple question, which still is central to all of our work. And that is, why is it that some people are more vulnerable to life's slings and arrows and others more resilient? And in the early part of my career, I focused a lot on the adversity side of the equation. I studied the brain mechanisms that gave rise to vulnerability to depression and anxiety and stress. And then in 1992, I first met His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and he really shook things up. He challenged me and he said, "You've been using tools of modern neuroscience to study depression and anxiety and fear and stress. Why can't you use those same tools to study kindness and to study compassion?" And it was a wake-up call for me, and I did not have a really good answer for him on that day, other than that it's hard. But, you know, when we first began to study anxiety and stress, that was hard too. And I think most scientists would agree that we've made at least a little bit of progress on that. And so that began a pivot for me toward the positive side of things. And I had begun myself personally to taste the benefit of meditation many years earlier. But it was very clear to me in the early part of my career that the scientific community just was not very receptive to this. In fact, I wanted to study this in graduate school. I was a graduate student at Harvard. And my professor said to me, Richie, if you want a successful career in science, this is a terrible way for you to begin. And they encouraged me to pursue something else. And I began to study the brain and emotion, which turned out to be important to lay the foundation for this work. But the Dalai Lama is really the person who is the most inspirational and pivotal in helping to make this shift. And so since that time, we have been doing just that and have really turned our attention to have a very different orientation. When I was in school, I was taught to look at people and try to discover what's wrong with them. And now I look at people and try to discover what's right with them.
Wow. Do you know how powerful that is? And I'm sure you do. Because and you're the perfect guest for what we're going to talk about with this COVID situation, because as you have seen what's going on in the world, I really would like to know, why are some people going crazy and well, they don't want to commit suicide. They want to just, kill everybody else and then commit suicide. And I believe it's a choice. They choose to go into an establishment and kill 10 people. And then they choose to try to plead insanity. So there's something going on with that puzzle, and with your knowledge and all of the things that you have discovered on both sides, the positivity aspect, outlook, and the negativity outlook and perspective. So what is it? Explain that, please, and help us.
Yeah, well, you're pointing to some very important issues, Kathy, and here's what I would say. There's no question that this has been a very challenging period for people all over the world. This is a crisis, the likes of which none of us have ever faced before. And so it really is a very significant crisis. And many people have, unfortunately, not nurtured the qualities and the skills which can help them navigate this crisis more successfully. One of the things that I frequently point out is that when human beings first evolved on this planet, none of us were brushing our teeth. And I'll bet every person who is viewing this show brushes their teeth. And they brush their teeth several times a day. They do it because it's important for their personal physical hygiene. What we're talking about are skills important for our personal mental hygiene.
Wow, that is very powerful. There is so much more there, because I have a different outlook, and you and I share so many similar values and beliefs, because I took the time to go inside. And as you said, it's an external world. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back with more of the world-renowned Dr. Richard. We'll be right back. Welcome back. We are here with Dr. Richard Davidson, and I'm just loving the conversation. So Dr. Richard, let me just pick up where we left off in the previous segment. So I resonate very, very well with you, which is one reason I was praying that God would give me and grant me an opportunity to just speak with you and my viewers. I took the time last year on the lockdown to go inside, because I spent 28 years in technology, a job a career I wasn't supposed to be there. It wasn't my calling, because I believe we're all called to do something. So I took the time to go inside to assess myself, my beliefs. Am I on track? Am I paying too much attention to the external noise? Or am I listening to that inner voice? Now, that's what I did. But I don't think too many people understand the power of that concept. Speak to that, please, if you can.
Yeah, it's a wonderful observation, Kathy, and I completely agree with you that people, many people have not refined their capacity to pay attention to what's going on inside their heart and inside their mind. And we can, I think, benefit tremendously from cultivating these skills of befriending our own minds and hearts and spending more time consulting, if you will, with what is already happening. We're again so pulled, we're so distracted. Research shows that the average adult spends 47% of her or his waking life not paying attention to what they're doing. They're just so frazzled, so distracted, and that's only been made worse by the pandemic. And so this is really a crisis. It also is the case that before the pandemic, in the US, 76% of the population reports themselves to be either moderately or significantly lonely. That was before the pandemic. This has, again, only been accentuated by the pandemic. So this is really a crisis, a public health crisis. And we hold the view that the cultivation of well-being is an urgent public health need. We can actually do something about this. Now, there are external factors that we can't control, like the pandemic, that inevitably will have an effect on us. And that is absolutely true. And the sad fact is that it disproportionately affects individuals in our society who are more marginalized. And that is also a fact. And that is a sad and difficult fact. Given all that, it's also true that everyone can nurture their own mind and improve their well-being to some extent. This is part of our innate capability as human beings. And every person, this is something the Dalai Lama teaches us. He always says there are 7 billion people on the planet, and we're all fundamentally the same. We all share the same wish to be happy, the same wish to be free of suffering, and we have the same basic nature. And we can cultivate qualities that can really be helpful in navigating these challenging times. So to be specific, one of the things that our center has done is to create a program called the Healthy Minds Program. We've put it into an app which is completely freely available. So there are no financial barriers, and it's available all over the world. It's called the Healthy Minds Program. So I would encourage viewers, if they're interested, to explore this and to try it out. And you can begin with practices that are as short as the amount of time it takes you each day to brush your teeth.
I am so glad you said everything that you just stated, because it was brilliantly said. And I'm going to just add to that, because you're so knowledgeable, and the way you explain it is so easy to understand. Because I saw that video when you gave that tip, and I started doing it. And so I am a testimony that really does work, because, even with some of our physical ailments and little aches and pains and arthritis and all the little things we deal with as we start to age, I noticed that started to ease up. When I started doing the mindfulness and, some of the things that you described as just in a positive, think positively, and, do this mindful routine, this exercise, and, your organization and your app that you mentioned, this is a program, and this is a lifestyle change. It's not something you're going to do and stop. this is something you can do every day. And I've done that. And I have really seen an improvement in, like I said, not only in how I feel about what's going on around me that I can't control, but how I feel physically, as far as, I got a tension headache, or I got arthritis, or I don't feel like getting out of bed, or I'm stiff, or whatever. That's starting to disappear. So I know it works.
That's beautiful. It's wonderful to hear that. And and thank you so much for sharing that. We all have aches and pains. It's just part of being human. And so being able to navigate that, and when we don't fight it and simply are aware of it, make friends with it, then it's not as much of a problem anymore. It begins to recede in the background. And so I think that these are strategies which can be so useful. And your comment about doing it every day is really important. We don't stop brushing our teeth at some point in our life and say, well, we've done it for the last 5 years, that's enough. We recognize that we need to do it every day. The same is true with these simple habits of mind.
You have to start at some point. Maybe you didn't start prior to the pandemic, so it affected you mentally and psychologically worse than some others. But it's never too late to start. Some people say, well, I'm too old, I'm too this, I'm too that. Well, you're still above ground. It's never too late to start. So, that I'm loving this conversation. It's incredible. You're incredible. But we have to take one more quick break, and we will be right back with the world-renowned Dr. Richard Davidson.
On our next Living by Design, Kathy Holloway Hill sits down with Kercelia Patterson as she discusses how COVID-19 has affected her family.
So can you imagine kids going back and forth into quarantine?
Next week on Living by Design.
Welcome back. We are still here talking about our COVID series on the psychological and emotional distress. Now, if you've been listening, I'm saying distress because if you want to view it that way, then it is distress. But if you want to view it as an opportunity to get better in tune and in touch with your inner spirit, your inner conscious, your inner guide, then you can do that. Dr. Richard, I hear a lot of people say, I had a feeling, or I had a gut instinct, or something told me. Now, if something is talking to you, we all have an inner voice. But these same people go and ask all of their friends and people they know for their advice. Why do we do that? Why can't we pay attention to that inner voice?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. And I don't think any of us really has the answer, but there are certain things that we believe are important. One is we need to nurture these qualities early in life so that they become part of the development of our children. Children can easily be taught this. We've developed a mindfulness and kindness curriculum beginning with preschool children, which, by the way, for anyone who's interested, it is also available freely on our website in both English and Spanish. You can download it. And it's being used in about 35,000 schools across the world today.
And Dr. Richard, I don't mean to interrupt you, but since you said that, go ahead and give your website. I'm going to ask for it again at the end, but please just go ahead and give that website where they can download that.
They can download it from the Center for Healthy Minds. It's and I can give you the URL. I should just know this by heart. It's Center.
Don't worry about it. We got it.
Healthyminds.org.
Okay.
Centerhealthyminds.org.
Great.
So, getting back to your question, we often don't pay attention to that inner voice because we have not learned to strengthen it. We have basically learned to ignore it. And we can do a much better job beginning in early childhood and strengthening it as children develop. One of the ways in which we understand other people, one of the ways in which we develop empathy and kindness and compassion is by sensing in our own body what another person may be feeling. And if we can't be in touch with what's going on in our body, our heart, our mind, then we are not going to be able to take the perspective of another. We won't be able to be as responsive to another as we might be. But the cool thing is that this is a learnable skill. This is what the science teaches us. We can actually learn this. Learn it in a way that's like learning to play the violin or learning to engage in a complex sport. We all know that to do those things requires practice. You can't pick up a violin and start playing it. You can't go to a lecture or read a book and expect to play it. You've got to practice. And in the same way, you have to practice kindness. You have to practice mindfulness. These are embodied skills, but it doesn't take much to begin to get this going. A few minutes a day can really be an elixir for the soul.
You know, I love everything you just said. And you mentioned the Center for Healthy Minds. So talk a little bit about your mission and what inspired you to create that.
The mission of the center, as we put it out on our website, is to cultivate well-being and relieve suffering through a scientific understanding of the mind. That is our mission. And what led me to create it is the conviction that we need as a species to do a better job of nurturing the qualities which we are all endowed with, but they will not flourish unless they're nurtured. We all have the capacity for kindness and compassion and mindfulness, but they will not develop unless they're nurtured. And pre-pandemic, we recognized that humanity was not on a particularly healthy or sustainable trajectory. And with the pandemic, it's only made it worse. And so we need to bring this message out to the world. And we need people to appreciate and then to incorporate into their life simple skills to nurture these qualities. Again, I go back to brushing your teeth or doing physical exercise. Physical exercise is another good example. Many people have incorporated some kind of physical exercise into their weekly routine because they understand that it is good for their health. Mental exercise of the kind I'm talking about is also good for your health. It's good for your mental health, and it turns out it's also good for your physical health. So we're trying to do this in every way we possibly can.
Yes. Yeah, well, you're doing an incredible job, and I think the work you're doing is remarkable. I did want to make sure that we get, before we run out of time, I know your latest book is entitled Altered Traits. What is that about, and where can people purchase that book? Well, you have a ton of books, but I think that's your latest, right? Your most current?
Yes, that's the most recent. It was co-authored with dear friend and colleague Daniel Goleman, yes, who was author of Emotional Intelligence. Altered Traits, the subtitle is Science Reveals How Meditation Changes the Mind, Brain, and Body. And it is a book that summarizes for the layperson the scientific research on meditation and illustrates the value of different kinds of meditation practices that can cultivate well-being and human flourishing. You can get that book anywhere that books are sold, either digitally, auditory, or in print.
Excellent, excellent. And give us your website once again. centerhealthyminds.org. And there's another website I'll encourage you to go to, that's tryhealthyminds.org, all one word, tryhealthyminds.org. That will provide information about our app. And again, the app is called the Healthy Minds Program, and it is freely available from wherever you download apps. Excellent. And if we wanted to follow you on social media, what are your social media names?
The social media names are, let's see, you can follow us on Twitter at Healthy Minds. You can follow us on Facebook at Investigating Healthy Minds.
Excellent. Whoa. Dr. Richard Davidson, I thank you, sir, for your service and for everything you've done for the world, and certainly everything you have done for my viewers today, including me. May you be blessed forever. And we want to thank you for joining us for this episode of Living by Design, and we'll see you same time next week with another empowering episode. Good night, everyone.